the 2016 Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series. Brought to you from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. The Republican race for the 14th Congressional District.
Good afternoon. I'm Claire Sims, multimedia journalist for Fox 5 News in Atlanta. We'd like to welcome you all to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series, originating from the GPB studios in Atlanta. This is the debate among the Republican candidates in Georgia's 14th Congressional District. The 14th Congressional District covers most of northwest Georgia, including Chattooga, Floyd, Paulding, Polk, Walker, and Whitfield counties. Now, let's meet the candidates. They are, in alphabetical order, Tom Graves, who has been in Congress since 2010 and is currently chairman of the Georgia Republican Congressional Delegation. Congressman Graves declined our invitation to participate in this event and is represented by an empty podium, a long-standing debate tradition. Allan Levene is a British-American information technology specialist from Rome, Georgia. And Mickey Tuck has been an electrician for 17 years and is from Silver Creek, Georgia, in Floyd County. Now, let's meet our panelists. Bradley George is the host of Morning Edition statewide on GPB Atlanta. Scott Kimbler is the morning reporter for News Radio 106.7. And Maggie Lee is a freelance print reporter specializing in state and metro Atlanta government and politics. Today's debate will consist of 3 rounds. For more information on the rules for each round, please visit the Atlanta Press Club website at atlantapressclub.org. Now, let's get started. In the first round, each candidate will be asked one question by one of our panelists. Candidates have 60 seconds to answer that question. Maggie Lee, you get the first question to Allan Levene.
Hi, Mr. Levene. You don't live in the district, and you've run in multiple districts before. Why should voters see you as a candidate who will represent the 14th?
Well, that's a good question. Thank you. I've answered this question in the past. We currently live in Cobb County, the adjacent county to the 14th District. A house is listed through the multiple listing service is up for sale. We cannot rent it because of the subdivision bylaws, so as soon as we sell it, we'll be moving to Floyd County or perhaps a county north of there.
Thank you. Scott Kimbler, you get the next question for Mickey Tuck.
Mr. Tuck, we've had an issue here in Georgia for 3 past sessions about medical marijuana. It's now legal to possess, but not legal to bring here. And the folks in Georgia tend to keep kicking it up the hill to Washington and saying, well, if they would just deregulate the transportation of this, then we wouldn't have an issue. Where would you stand on allowing the transportation of medical marijuana across state lines?
Well, first of all, I'm a 10th Amendment guy, and I believe the state should have the right to regulate that issue within their states. And I think, you know, the way it's looking and the way it's progressing with the medical cannabis and the cannabis oil, it looks like Congress will sooner or later have to step up to the plate to pass something to make it where someone that, say, lives in Georgia has to go through another state to possess that cannabis oil because Georgia doesn't manufacture that here at the time, that we'll have to make it legal in some way for that person to be able to process that, or and to be able to, not process, but able to go to adjacent state or another state to obtain that cannabis marijuana for their child or whoever it may need to be. But yeah, that's something I would support and something that we need to do because there's medical evidence that it does help these children that have seizures, epilepsy, autism, and those type of illnesses. And if the state honors that, then we as federal government should help them to obtain it, even if that means crossing.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck. Your time is up. Well, that concludes our first round. In the second round, each candidate will ask one question to the opponent of their choice. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask the question, 60 seconds to respond, and then 30 seconds for a rebuttal. By random selection, Allan Levene, you get the first question.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the missing congressional representatives, Graves, this question. It's fairly lengthy, so I need to read this. Congressman Graves, can you explain why you haven't sponsored any meaningful bills since 2013, except for one last year that allowed our government to spend as much as it wanted to without a budget? Could it be that you feel entitled and comfortable in your job and don't even show up at any of the debates as you will be asked awkward questions? Could you respond to that, please?
Because Mr. Graves is not here, he will not be able to respond, but you do get a 30-second rebuttal. Would you like to have a 30-second rebuttal?
No, I'll pass on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think I've made my point.
Mr. Tuck, the second question goes to you.
Yes, my question also goes to Congressman Tom Graves. How can you call yourself a fiscal conservative when, especially after this last omnibus budget that was passed, the CBO, this is not Mickey Tuck saying this, but it's online for anyone to see, but the Congressional Budget Office has said that this budget is the worst budget since 2009 compared to the economy, in that already as of March, the deficit spending is $18 billion more this time last year, and on top of that, the revenue was increased by 4% to the federal government. So we had an increase in revenue by 4%. We had additional deficit spending by $18 billion compared to last year. How do you answer that question and you confess to be a fiscal conservative?
Again, because Mr. Graves is not here, he will not be able to answer, but you do have 30 more seconds.
And I guess as a rebuttal to that, if I'm allowed to look at one more subject, Tom Graves also professes to be a person for the working class family. He has voted for CORS, which is a Korean trade deal, which has already cost 80,000 American jobs. That's gone overseas, and now he's gave Obama the fast track to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is already estimated to cost several more million manufacturing jobs. So how can you be for the working man, the working family, and for liberty and for everybody?
Thank you, Mr. Tuck.
Thank you.
For those of you just joining us, this is the debate between the Republican candidates in Georgia's 14th Congressional District. We will now go to our third and final round. In this round, each panelist will ask a question to the candidate of his or her choice until we run out of time. I will determine when a rebuttal is appropriate. Bradley George, you get the first question.
Thanks, Claire. Mr. Levene, Tom Graves has over $781,000 in cash on hand for his campaign. By comparison, both you and Mr. Tuck have raised very little money. How do you hope to make an impact against a well-financed opponent?
The very nature of our political system is that incumbents attract money after they're elected. The reason for that is that big business wants to buy the candidate, buy the soon-to-be incumbent, and I object to that. I do have a solution that if elected, one of the two main platform items is that after each election, federal election, all the candidates have to turn over all of the residual funds that they have to charity. They turn it over to an agency in the federal government. The federal government will turn that money over to the top 50 charities. As such, during each election cycle, every candidate will have nothing to begin with, and that will make the system fairer. We have to make the system fair because it's corrupt. And I plan, if elected, to help fix the system. It's really important for the well-being of this nation to do so.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tuck, we're going to let you answer the same question. Okay.
We have to look at the amount of money that's been donated by individuals and not corporations and lobbyists and a special interest, and compare that into actually people of the district that are actually supporting me compared to those that are supporting Tom Graves. And also, I've been doing the legwork for over a year now, doing the old-fashioned political campaign style, going to every conservative meeting, whether it's a GOP meeting or whether it's a Tea Party meeting in every county in this district. And also, I've been doing the legwork of going downtown to the downtown areas, talking to the business people, to the people that work downtown, to the people that live in the districts, listening to their complaints, listening to their concerns, and them also listening to me one-on-one. And I believe that's going to be an advantage of doing the old-fashioned political style campaigning, and the grassroots works will propel me to victory in this election.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck.
If I may make an additional comment, which you can...
I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Okay.
Scott, it's your turn.
Mr. Tuck, you're being a tradesman and an electrician for many years. One of the difficulties in starting a small business or being self-employed is that you have a difficult tax structure and that you have to pay what a corporation would pay to match your taxes. And that can be difficult for the small business owner, especially somebody that's just starting up. For many years, people have talked about spurring job growth and have talked about easing these sort of tax regulations, but not a lot has come out of Capitol Hill. What would you do to spur job growth, especially in the small business sector?
Well, in the small business sector, to spur job growth, first we're going to have to ease up the regulations, whether it comes from, what are the federal regulations come from high taxation on small businesses to also the crony capitalism that goes on in Washington, D.C., where the large corporations have our lawmakers pass laws that benefit the monopolies or corporations of the United States, which smothers the small businessman. We need to give the small businessman equal footing with the large corporation when it comes to tax breaks, to tax laws. We need to have a level playing field on that. And as an electrician and working in manufacturing, we're going to have to do things to bring manufacturing back to the United States, and that involves a lot of small business owners. A lot of manufacturing are small business owners, and they're just having a tough time competing against foreign trade as well with the mega corporations. And so we need to bring a level playing field internationally and nationally compared to the large corporations and the small business people, so they will have a fair chance to succeed.
Thank you very much. Maggie, it's your turn for a question.
Sure. Let me ask a question to Mr. Levene about trade policy. We talked a little bit about TPP, about manufacturing jobs in the United States. What kind of trade policy should come out of Congress?
Well, this is one of my favorite topics because the root reason that this country is as amazing as it is because of manufacturing. In 1945, we as a nation had a GDP which was almost 50% of the entire planet. It's now 20%. China had a GDP of 4% of the entire planet, and it's also now 20%, and they're growing very, very, very rapidly. What I would do, which is my key platform item, is to eliminate corporate taxes on for the profits made to manufacture in the United States, not only for big companies, but for small ones. And but this is really key, not assembly, which means a big manufacturer will start to source materials from domestic manufacturers, who in turn will source from other domestic manufacturers, and so on and so forth. It will create millions of jobs at higher wages.
Thank you. Your time is up. Bradley, you may ask your next question.
Mr. Levene, for a while now, there's been an effort in Paulding County to add commercial service passenger flights from Paulding County Airport. Many Paulding residents are opposed. The City of Atlanta and Delta Airlines are also opposed to this effort. Where do you stand on this issue?
Well, the commercial flights issue in Paulding County I've looked into. This is, however, a state issue. It's not really a federal issue. I'm more focused on creating large numbers, millions of jobs for Americans at higher wages, not minimum wage, than focusing on Paulding County. Broadly speaking, I'd say an airport is fine, but I don't really want a commercial airport because most of the people in Paulding County commute to Atlanta, to Fulton County, and to Cobb County. As such, the congestion is really bad, and it will be made even worse with commercial flights. However, it is a state issue, and I'd be happy, if elected, to speak with my state representative colleagues and make an input. But it is a state issue after all.
Thank you. Scott?
If either of you are elected, you will be dealing with a new president come January. As both of you are Republicans, and there is a faction of the Republican Party that is not in support of Donald Trump, would you stand behind Trump and what he's doing and being the presumptive nominee at this point to defeat Hillary?
Mr. Tuck, why don't you go first?
If Donald Trump is looks like he's going to be the nominee, and as a Republican Party, we need to come together and go against him to do whatever we can to defeat the Democrat opponent. And based on Donald Trump's policies, if they're based on the conservative values of the 14th District and they approve of his policies and they want his policies pursued, then I will vote in favor of Donald Trump's policies. But if they're likewise the other way, if their policies they don't approve of and don't approve of the conservative values of the voters of the 14th District, then I'll have to oppose Donald Trump on those policies.
Mr. Levene, you can also answer the question.
Well, I'm a Republican. I've always been a Republican, and I will vote Republican. And I will support the president, hopefully in January, a Republican. I also believe in the 80-20 rule. That is that if I can get 80% of what I want done, and I don't get the remaining 20%, then I'm happy. Life is compromise. As we all know who's watching this show, as well as in this room, it's rare that anybody gets everything of what they want. So I'm all about compromise for the greater benefit of the American public.
Thank you. Maggie.
Another question, I think, for both of you. If elected, what would be your strategy to move any of your policies through Congress? What can you do as a new person, as people who haven't been in elected office before? How would you move your policies?
Mr. Levene, let's start with you this time.
Well, this is probably the key area, because unless we have compromise in Washington, which we do not have at the moment, because the incumbents have positions and they are stuck on those positions and they will not budge for political reasons, nothing's going to happen. We're going to get deeper and deeper and deeper into debt until we have a financial collapse that I predict will happen in about two to 2.5 years. That's why I'm running, and that's what I'm determined to stop, because it's fairly easy if we get compromise. I have to deal with my Republican colleagues and also the Democratic members of Congress, and I believe we have to negotiate and come up with that 80-20 rule, where not both sides don't get everything they want, but you get the majority of what you're looking to do. Otherwise, we have gridlock and nothing happens. And that is to China's benefit, and we cannot let that happen.
Thank you. Mr. Tuck.
When I get to Washington, D.C., my first thing I'd like to do would be to join the Freedom Caucus. That's a group of members that are conservative-minded as myself, believe in Republican principles, believe in the Constitution, and believe in conservative values. And they're growing in number, and they're already having an impact, as we've seen in the fall of John Boehner, to have their message, the conservative message, delivered to the floor. And I plan to work with them, and if we can compromise with the moderate establishment in Washington, D.C., we'll compromise where we can. But that's why Washington's fed up. That's why 75% of Republicans voted for either Trump or for Ted Cruz, because the conservatives, supposedly some conservatives in our Republican Party, are not fighting for them, standing for the values, and that's what the 14th District expects of their congressman.
Thank you. Mr. Levene, in the first round, Scott asked Mr. Tuck about medical marijuana and specifically what Congress could do, because Georgia, a lot of our representatives say their hands are somewhat tied. What's your position on that, and what would you do?
I endorse the use of medical marijuana because it's beneficial to the public. I don't, just because the word marijuana is in the description doesn't mean that it's bad. Medical marijuana has a medical use. We have an opioid epidemic in this country. People are dying from alcohol, from cancer caused by tobacco. They're dying from overdosing on prescription drugs. I think medical marijuana is inconsequential to our greater problems that we have, and we should not focus on that word marijuana. I did some research years ago about marijuana, and I found out that nobody's died from it. On the other hand, when you look at tobacco, alcohol, opioid drugs, and so on and so forth, we have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of Americans dying from these drugs.
Thank you very much. Let's go back to our panel. Bradley.
Mr. Tuck, I wanted to give you the opportunity to answer the question I asked Mr. Levene. Passenger flights from Paulding County Airport, what's your position on that?
Once again, I'm a 10th Amendment guy, and I believe that decision is regulated to the state, which that would be the state of Georgia. I know as many times as I've been in Paulding County over the year, the majority of the people there are against this airport expansion, and most of the candidates that I support that are running for local elections there are also against the expansion of the airport. And so, it's going to have to be left up to the people of Paulding County in the state of Georgia.
Thank you. Scott.
Mr. Levene, we've had a lot of people in Congress, especially the Republicans, threaten to defund Obamacare. And you come from a country that is more familiar with universal health care or even more government-related health care than we are here. Is it a smart idea to defund Obamacare and start over again, or is it a smart idea to kick it back to the private sector or even become a universal health care country?
Well, the Democrats actually plan to make the Obamacare, which is in my opinion, the Unaffordable Care Act, by essentially having the insurance companies withdraw from Obamacare so then they could throw their hands up and say, you know what we need to do? We need to have a national tax and provide medical services for all. Obamacare has been gamed as soon as it came out. I wrote an article. I have 250 articles on my campaign website, something no other candidate does, because no other or very few candidates actually have positions they're willing to put in writing. And the problem we have is that the people who have gamed the system are the ones who are bringing the system down. I do not like national health care. I was brought up under national health care. I have the teeth to prove it. The British system is falling apart. The wheels are falling off the British system. We need to go back to the way it was, but perhaps have the insurance companies covering all 50 states and protectorates, and so they can operate whenever they need to.
Thank you very much. Maggie, we have time for one more question.
Sure. Mr. Tuck, you've said your platform is to dismantle and rebuild. Can you name 2 or 3 agencies or laws or policies that you would like to dismantle and what you'd like to replace them with?
Well, we need to dismantle back to the foundation of the U.S. Constitution. We have many agencies, and most of the departments that we have are unconstitutional. If you look at the responsibilities of Congress and the government in Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, the first department I would like to defund and do away with would be the Department of Education, because the education belongs on the local level and the state level for us to how we want to educate our children. The Department of Transportation, Georgia only gets, I believe, 85% of the money we give to the federal government back for roads. We need to do away with the Department of Transportation, let the states handle their transportation needs, and use 100% of the money. We can look at the Department of the Interior. The federal government under the Constitution is not supposed to own land, and all that federal land needs to be returned to the states. So there's 3 places I would start right off the bat to dismantle our government, save spending, and return us back to the foundation, which is the U.S. Constitution.
Thank you very much. That's all the time we have for questions. Now each candidate will have 60 seconds for a closing statement. Mickey Tuck, you get the first closing statement.
Okay, thank you. First, I thank you for letting me be here today. I appreciate the invitation. I believe that I'm the true conservative Republican in this election. I've been across this state or not across the state, but across this district for over the past year. I've learned the district very well, and I'm not ashamed to say that I know this district better than any candidate, whether it's Tom Graves or Mr. Levene. I've learned the people. I know the people. I know their desires. I know their pains. I know their struggles, and through that, I can take what I've learned over the past year back with me to Washington, D.C. My heart is for this country. I love this country. I love this flag. I love the people of the 14th District. And it's that drive. It's not committees. It's not chairmanships. It's not, what I can gain by going to Washington, D.C., but it's about the desire to serve the people of the 14th District. And that's what they desire, somebody that will serve them, that will represent them, that will vote for them. And that's what I'll give the people of the 14th District.
Thank you. Mr. Levene, it's your turn.
I am all about manufacturing in the United States. China is eating our lunch. We have to bring back manufacturing. I have a concrete, simple plan to do that. If elected, I'm going to push for it all of the time. I will actually not rent or buy a house in Washington. I will sleep in my office, and because I don't like commuting. It's a waste of my time. And at 66 or 67, when sworn in, I recognize that time is the only thing that I have left. And what I want to do, because I am an immigrant, and I recognize probably more than anybody watching this show, that this country is amazing. But I studied history in England And I'm seeing the same fault lines appear in this nation as appeared in Great Britain, which was the most powerful country in the 19th century.
Thank you very
I
much.
need to fix that.
Thank you. That concludes our debate. We'd like to remind voters that the primary elections will be held on Tuesday, May 24th, and early voting is already underway. Our thanks to the candidates and to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging today's debate. For more information about the Atlanta Press Club and all of the debates they will host this primary election season, visit atlantapressclub.org. Stay with us for the debate among the Republican candidates in Georgia's 11th Congressional District. That's up next. I'm Claire Sims. Thanks for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series.